Do you ever get really mad at people that are in charge and you're like, why don't you just do something? Yeah, me too. And I think of this sometimes when I read the Psalms about David. You know, he just seems so passive sometimes. It just, ooh, do something. So, let's talk about it. Good morning, this is Aunt Beth. Welcome to my lamppost. Today we're in Psalm 7. And, man, I started doing some research and behind the story behind this psalm. So let me tell you a quick story. King David, had several sons by several wives. The firstborn that technically should have been king of Israel, when he died, was named Ammon. And the third son by another wife was, his name was Absalom. And according to the Bible, he was extremely handsome and had very long, thick hair, which is important later on. But, so they were born to David when he was running from his life from Saul. He had been anointed king of Israel, and Saul didn't like that and was coming after him. So he spent 7 years outside the capital city. And his boys, these two, were born to him. Ammon was number 1 in line, and Absalom, through a second mother, so they were stepbrothers, is number 3 in line. So, Ammon has the hots for Absalom's sister. This is many years later. The kids are probably in their 20s and 30s. And they are living in Jerusalem in the palace. And so David's nephew, so his Ammon's cousin, talks him into pretending to be sick and violating his half-sister. And he, after he does the deed, he doesn't want to see her anymore. Absalom, the older brother, is furious with what was done to his baby sister. And David doesn't do anything. So 2 years later, the king heard about it. It says in the Bible that he heard about it. He was angry, but he didn't do anything. He stayed out of it. Those two needed to settle it for themselves. But Absalom is really pissed off that his dad didn't do anything. So he takes matters into his own hands. And 2 years later, invites him to a party. He also, by the way, invites his dad, the king, to a party. His dad says, no thanks, you guys go on ahead. It was a setup, and Absalom killed his brother at the party. So David banishes, or Absalom runs for his life because he's sure his dad's going to come after him. And he was away from Jerusalem for about 2 years. But remember, he's third in line. And so they have some sort of a structured negotiation. And Absalom comes back to Jerusalem. But he's not allowed to see the king's face. I don't even want to see him, but yeah, he can come home. So then I think it's another, no, he was gone for 3 years, and then 2 years later, he was gone for 3 years. And then 2 years after he was brought home, okay, and then it was 2 years before he could see the face of the king. So then, after that, Absalom starts sitting in the city gate, okay, and saying, well, if I were king, we would handle this differently. He's undercutting his father. If I were king, da-da-da. And David, I'm sure, heard about it, doesn't do anything. So, 4 years after Absalom's brought back and is now seeing the king's face, so basically 6 years after he's back in the town, 4 years after he starts seeing the king's face, Absalom leaves the city and anoints himself as king. He's not waiting anymore for his father. David flees the city because 4 years of buying favor, Absalom's got a lot of the country and, saying, go, go, go. So David flees Jerusalem, but the priests try to bring the ark with David, and David sends them back to Jerusalem. And on the way out of the city, David is cursed as far as everything that's going on. And you can read this in 2 Samuel 16. This whole thing starts in 2 Samuel 13. So this is 11 years after Ammon violates Absalom's baby sister, his half-sister. So here is David being absolutely betrayed. His son is undercutting him. His son doesn't want to wait, for justice. He's taking things personally. David has been trying to stay out of the infighting between his children. And I just got frustrated until I realized how old they were. And I'm thinking, wow, that's really takes a lot of strength to stay out of somebody else's fight. I'm sorry, I made some notes. So, one of the people that goes with Absalom out of the city and, anointed king and all this stuff is Ahithophel. I think I'm saying his name right. He was David's most trusted counselor, and his reputation was whatever he said was like God talking. He was absolutely right on. You have to know there's some agenda there, because Ahithophel was actually Bathsheba's grandfather. And Bathsheba was another wife of David, taken totally wrong, but and one of her children, Solomon, ended up being king of Israel. But Ahithophel is David's most trusted advisor, and he goes with Absalom. David hears about this on the way out of the city after sending the ark back, and he said, "Oh Lord, please don't let Absalom listen to Ahithophel, because we are toast if he does that." So he's on the way out of the city, and Ahithophel counsels Absalom, go after him now, while he's exhausted. And Absalom, and he got some other counsel from one of David's men that David had asked to go David had asked him, don't come with me, turn back, and, if possible, give counsel to Absalom. And Absalom listened to that guy, so David and his people escaped. And Ahithophel knew he was going to be, when David got back, he would be king and he would be arrested for treason, so he went and hung himself. So that's really taking it personally, that nobody, whatever, listens to what you have to say. In the meantime, we have a very treacherous servant named Ziba, who says one thing and not another, and, he's like supporting David with his master's money, but says that it's really his because his master doesn't really want him. In the meantime, you've got all these people with all these crazy agendas. And what does David do? Nothing. I mean, he defends his own life when people are attacking him, but he's just trusting the judgment of God. And that he asked God in Psalm 7 to judge him if he's done anything wrong. He doesn't send God after, go get him, Lord, but realizes that they'll reap what they sow. Man, it just really struck me reading all the background to this psalm is, do I trust the judgment of God, or am I going to take matters into my own hands and make things right? That takes a really strong person to let God handle it in his perfect timing. I'm not talking about being complacent or passive, but being strong enough to trust the judgment of God. So there's a couple verses I thought were amazing, and I'm trying to put the verses below in where it says more. Click on that, and I'll trying to type the Psalms below, but it says, "Arise, O Lord, in your anger, lift yourself up because of the rage of my enemies." So he's asking God to be the judge. He said, "Let the wickedness of the wicked come to an end, but establish the just. For the righteous God tests the hearts and minds. My defense is of God, who saves the upright in heart." Man, that takes a strong person to just not take matters into your own hands, but trust the judgment and timing of the Lord. Do I wish that David would have intervened in his household affairs? Well, where does it ever end? They're adults. It's interesting because nowhere in the Bible does it say that Absalom came to David and asked him to do something about it. And when he took matters into his own hands, David stayed out of it. Man, that's a fine balance point, isn't it? But asking God to judge the situation and God to move instead of me, boy, that takes a strong person. I just hope I can get to the place where I'm not vindicating myself, but letting God vindicate me, and that I'm not taking it personally and what that person says about me being true, but trusting the judge, trusting the judgment of God. Anyway, some random thoughts. So I hope this blesses you. In the midst of craziness, am I going to take it personally or ask God to intervene? Wow, that's hard. Have a fabulous day. All God's best.